course, I want to introduce you to from Kansas. Is that correct?
Yes.
So we got the same area as Vicious Victor Ortiz, as a number of other fighters, the Acevedo brothers, and the next in that long line or lineage, looking to make a splash here, turning professional, is Alan Garcia. Welcome to Just Boxing Live. Thanks for having us. Yeah, clap, clap.
Pleasure to be here.
And he's got a couple members of his team with him. So his head coach, sitting in the middle of the couch, making her return to Just Boxing Live, the always lovely. You call her Mama G. I call her Miss Gloria Mosquera. Thank you for joining us. Clap, 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 clap.
Yeah.
And on the far end, we have, of course, strength and conditioning. The head of strength and conditioning for Andy's camp, or I'm sorry, for Alan's camp. I just buried the lead. I just buried the lead in it right there. But we have, of course, degree in kinesiology. I always struggle with that word. Is that right? Did I get it right? Kinesiology?
All right, that was perfect. Yes.
Strength and conditioning coach Andy Aguilar, a man of science. I appreciate you guys for coming on. Wow, man. Did I get through that okay? It's been a while. It's been a while since I've been able to do this. But thank you guys for coming on, genuinely. I mentioned at the top of this, so you're from Kansas. You're now training out of L.A. with Gloria, of course, and with Andy. Can you tell me a little bit about what that transition has been like, or specifically, what would you describe are the biggest differences between the boxing scene in Kansas, which has produced some of the names that I talked about, and the boxing scene here in Los Angeles?
Some of the differences that I've encountered while I've been out here in Los Angeles is that the training is definitely different. They have a different style out here. You know, as do all states got a little bit different styles, but it's also that there's more opportunities here in California than there was in Kansas, because where I'm from, its population 6,000, 7,000. We didn't have strength and conditioning coaches where I was from, or even anyone in those categories or anything close to it. You know, like all we would do for conditioning was, you know, pull a rope, slam ropes, and run. And out here, we actually got, you know, I have Andy that'll, like, he tells us the workouts, he tells us what it works on, and then we go from there. But yeah, I actually get more sparring out here. I get more work. I work 6 days a week instead of 4 or 5. But you know, I love the work, so everything's good. Everything's falling to plan.
Now, Andy, he mentioned some of the exercises that you've got him doing, and I know that sometimes I check these out on Instagram, and they're not things that I think someone would just imagine. It's apparent that you need to be trained in order to do some of these exercises. They don't just come out of for instance, I would never consider some of them. Sometimes they even look like you're in a little bit of a compromising position. How hard is it to convince these guys to get to do these exercises?
Well, in my experience, there's not too much difficulty in actually getting these athletes to be able to perform these exercises. Why is that? It's because of the fact that, just like Alan explained prior, it's just making sure that I'm responsible in explaining what we're trying to do. I mean, I can make them do any type of exercise, but if there's no communication into the purpose of the exercise, obviously I don't have buy-in from that athlete. And that's the worst thing that can happen. When the athlete doesn't have a buy-in for the coach, then they're just going to go 50% on the exercise. It could be the best exercise in the world, but if there's no real explanation behind it or even a purpose coming from the coach, there's going to be a risk in which the athlete just doesn't have that buy-in. So as long as I have some sort of explanation going from a scientific point of view to a application point of view, like how will this help you in a boxing ring and in a fight, then there's absolute buy-in from the athlete right there. So, and I always make sure like all the athletes are prepared. I'll never make Alan or any boxer jump into any exercise I feel that they can be in severe compromise to which they can get injured, because this is their life, man. It's their career. Right? They can't afford to get hurt.
So you mentioned buy-in from the head coach, and obviously, Alan, your head coach is there in the middle, Miss Mama G. And you, G, clearly have a strong relationship with Andy and with Alan. So you found that strength and conditioning has been working. I know that Roxy, of course, has worked with Andy in the past as well. What are some of the benefits that you, as the head coach from a boxing standpoint, have seen, or some of the differences that you've seen once your athletes start working with Andy and utilizing strength and conditioning coaches?
Well, there's several different noticeable things that I've seen in my daughter. I've seen in lots of other athletes that he's worked with, including Anthony Herrera, just made the Olympic team. We started with my daughter, and I just saw a huge difference in her confidence, speed, power. I mean, she was dominating the amateur, the amateurs, and her divisions and her weight classes. But when we knew we had to step up the game with, moving up 2 weight divisions and then fighting grown women, I asked Andy, like I got a hold of Andy, like we explained last time, and I noticed a difference in her confidence, and the body change, the muscle that he put on her, the speed, that goes hand in hand with boxing, balance, as well as Alan. I knew we had a plan when we came. I got with Andy and I said, look, I have this kid, he's a young man, 17 years old. He still, needs to develop as a man, but he wants to go pro. And have you seen the difference when I post pictures and just the body, just the strength, the power, the speed, everything he has? It's the same noticeable work that I saw in Roxy. Only he's a man now, and he's very strong and fast and healthy.
So, and I want to make sure I get it right. Do I have to throw the accent on it? Is it Alan?
It is Alan.
Alan. Okay. I'll do my best.
He prefers Alan.
He prefers what?
Alan.
Alan. Okay. If I'm not getting it right, let me know. Correct me for sure. So, Alan, so you mentioned that, the concept of strength and conditioning was kind of something different to you once you came to Los Angeles. And you also talked about some distinctions in the types of training that you experienced between Kansas and what you experience in LA. And it sounds like that also translates to the experience or the level of competition that you're facing. Would you say that, obviously, G has spoken to some of the things that physically, the changes that you're undergoing. You're 17 years old, so you're still transforming for the professional game. That's one thing I should make clear. You haven't turned pro yet, correct?
Correct.
So what are the distinctions between the amateur and the professional? What is it that you're trying to do in this few months, or hopefully not too long before you turn professional, but what are you trying to change about your craft in this few months before you get ready to go into the pros?
Well, it's like in the amateurs, they focus on throwing a lot of punches, whether the punches are effective or not. They focus on the punches, the aggression, the better boxer. As though in the pros, it's different because, they focus on the punches. They focus on the punches that matter, not just the little pitter patter. Also, I'm going to be fighting grown men. There's not many young people out there that are pro. I'm going to be fighting grown men, but with the strength and conditioning and the boxing that I'm getting and I'm learning every day, I feel like we're already matching some of these men that are out here, if not already passing them. And, I got the right team behind me. I got the right team with me.
I can see that.
Thank you. But we're doing really good. We're on a fast track, and we're giving everything time. We are looking to go pro soon, within a few months. But yeah, it's just different from fighting kids my age to I'm going to be fighting grown men.
And can you talk a little bit about the motivation not to go pro as quickly as perhaps you may have liked? So obviously there's some obstacles in the way given the pandemic currently, but is it true that you wanted to go pro before and perhaps G convinced you not to?
She tried to convince me to wait, actually. She attempted to convince me to stay amateur. But, after I lost in where we're losing, at the tracks. Yeah. After I lost, I was like, I'm done with it. I knew I won that fight, and I was like, I'm ready to go pro. And she just kept telling me. We talked for a good hour after I fought, and we were just talking. And she tried to convince me to stay amateur, but I told her, like, I'm ready to go pro. I'm ready to go pro. Well, about a month after that, I'm not gonna say who, but a very big promotional company got in contact with me, and I told her, I was like, these people are, they're tempting. And she was like, I'm flying you out here to California. And so next thing you know, I packed my bags and I was arriving in LA.
So, and you guys are at Andy's right now?
No,
No?
we're
Oh,
at
okay.
training camp where
The
we
re-
have training.
Yeah, the reason I ask, I've actually seen very recently, I went on and saw this crew here prominently featured on a two-part series on TBR Network. Do you guys know what I'm talking about? So Francesca from TBR Network posted a series about training as a fighter, and Andy, you were a big part of that, and both of you make cameos. And so does this shirt, by the way. So Just Boxing made its way into episode 1 of that. But I could see throughout the course of that, you guys had to transition from working within the gym to working in an outside kind of area. Still, obviously, very equipped. It looks like, Andy, you keep that well stocked in terms of equipment and things like that. What has the transition been like for all of you? Andy, why don't we start with you, since you were kind of prominently featured as part of that? In terms of bringing clients home, having to work with, all of your own equipment, did you already have that stuff, or how difficult has that been?
Yes, when the pandemic did start, I made a primarily for myself. I made a commitment to my fighters. I need to make sure I keep these gentlemen and ladies in shape, because of the fact that at any time these promoters can really call these fighters at any moment to get them scheduled for a fight, whether it be 2 months out to 2 weeks out. So they don't really have the luxury to really kind of sit around and not continue to train, because of the volatility of boxing and MMA, even if you want to get into that aspect too. So for me, it's just when the pandemic started, obviously facilities started to close down, and all this equipment is actually my own. I purchased all this equipment because I was pretty much prepared for worst case situations where the facility closed down. I still have camps running. I still have fighters that rely on me. So I'll pretty much ready to transfer anywhere to make sure these gentlemen and ladies are staying in shape and getting ready to fight at any given notice. So yeah, we were transitioning from gym to gym, and facilities started to close down because government orders. They just started closing everything for the safety of the public and the pandemic. So we pretty much transitioned to my assistant coach's facility, the assistant coach's house, and this is where we're currently residing at. I keep it limited to fighters. This is not public. I want to make sure this is still within caution, making sure everyone is safe, because once again, the coaches and also the fighters, I need them to be safe. I don't want to risk anything. So I make sure everything is pretty much exclusive in that sense.
And G, I know you experienced some of those same limitations, and from what I see, it led to a decision for a period of time to train in Mexico with Roxy and with Alan. Can you tell me a little bit about that decision, how that worked out?
Well, as Andy said, we had to. They closed down the gym, the beautiful facility, the UFC gym in Rosemead. So we had a plan. Like, we scattered, and I saw my coach right here a little disappointed, because one thing, he does not like to let his athletes down. He has to have camps for them. He's very passionate about that. So I got with him. I said, hey, let's start. I know basically every gym in California, all over the nation, but in California. Said, let's get a gym. Let's get someone that has a private gym, and we get there, and we did for about 2 weeks. That shut down. And Mark, he just walked in right now. He was, quick to operate his home, and they have a very big driveway, like backyard. A whole setup is here, along with Erica, his sister. So we brought everyone over here. That I was very far from here, and a lot of stuff was just closing down everywhere. We didn't know what the next move was. I, of course, concerns with my daughter being in a different country. They were locking everything down over there as well. And I got with my team, and I said, hey, we have to make a drastic decision. Parents were worrying. Alan's parents were worried about him as well. I was concerned about him. We had just brought him like 3 weeks. We were only here 3 weeks. And So I made it. I got on the phone with one of Andy, the strength and conditioning coach, and I said, look, we have to make, sit together as a team, and we have to make a decision, a huge decision. And he told me, you're going to Mexico. So with that being said, the very next morning, I told Alan, hey, pack your stuff. We're going to Mexico. And he was ready to go out the door, And he sent Andy, the team. We all got together and we got funds together, and we made the ultimate decision to go to Mexico. And when we got there, I have friends out there as well. They own private gyms. His gym closed down, and we had to be in quarantine like 15 days. So I asked him, hey, I'm here to help as well. Let's allow me to rent your gym. It's just going to be me, Alan, and when the quarantine thing ends up 15 days, then we'll bring Roxy in, and I'll train you as well. So that was like a perfect trade. So I started training him as well, along with Alan. So we had great sparring, and we had a great time out there. We made the best of it, and we learned a lot because it was just a lot of one-on-one. We got to know each other better, right? I mean, we spent a lot of time, and it was just him and I, and we just talk boxing, talk. I put a lot into his head before he started to train, and so I think he understood what I expected from him and how we needed him to perform in Mexico, and as well as coming back to the States, what to expect.
So in terms of what to expect, Alan, of course, you moved to Los Angeles, which is, let's say, a hotbed for boxing. You talked about it, the level of competition you get, in terms of training, conditioning. But then as a result of the pandemic, boxing shuts down in terms of all the events and things like that, somewhere back in the March timeframe. And now, even though they're talking about bringing it back, there's still going to be certain limitations, which is, I mean, we used to have fights here every weekend, or at least that's what my feeling was.
Friday, Saturday, Sunday.
Yeah,
Thursday
exactly.
too.
Right. We would have them every weekend. It would be full up. Now, the challenge is, of course, they're bringing boxing back. You're seeing things return in Las Vegas and as early as next week. However, some of the local promotional companies that do the events, the Thursdays, the Fridays, the Saturday type events, I feel like they're probably still going to struggle to get off the ground, considering that they don't have large promotional contracts with television networks, and therefore the absence of fans or competing without fans is going to impact them monetarily. I don't know how you can make money on those events without that kind of contract or without that kind of support. So there seems to be like less opportunities perhaps in the near term for young fighters like yourself, which may mean more travel or being more of a road warrior than getting to stick around in LA and compete a lot. Is that something that would concern you?
Honestly, it's not really concerning to me because with my team and the people I got behind me, Coach G has a lot of connections. There's a lot of people that are there was people interested in me before I even moved out to California. Now I'm in California. We still got big promotional companies that are interested in me, even at the age of 17. Because I don't know if you know, but you can fight in the states of like Nevada, Texas, New Jersey, Philadelphia, and Florida. And so those big companies, yeah, at 17, those big promotional companies, that some realize that there are young stars at the age of 17 and that they do got what it takes. And, in all humbleness, I do think I got what it takes, and some of these promotional companies do see that. And so we got people looking at us. I'm not really worried. I know my team will make the best decisions for me. So with whatever we go, wherever they go, I go.
Sounds good. And I could see you have a lot of faith in your team. Andy, earlier, I know that we were talking about the importance of strength and conditioning, and I mentioned the two-part series. One of the things that you did in that series on YouTube is you kind of broke down the phases of preparing an athlete. And something I thought was interesting is when you went through the phases, you kind of said there's phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, and each of those is maybe a period of 3 to 5 weeks. Whereas we kind of think of a typical training camp for a boxing athlete as maybe like an 8-week camp, for someone who's at the kind of elite level. How do you reconcile that, or how do you make sure that you're providing the right amount of training in that time frame, given that each of those phases, adds up to maybe 9-15 weeks on the outside.
Well, yes, of course. So with the phasic type training, I mean the best case scenario is when the fighter gets a calendar date that is about 2 to 3 months out. So obviously that would be the best case scenario where we can execute phase one, phase two, leading into phase three into the fight date right there. But the phases are mainly broken down in more regards of keeping myself organized and making sure that we have something systematic. It's all about a system. So I won't 100% always get the best case scenario with all fighters. As you intelligently deducted, some of these fighters, they come in with 5 weeks out. They come in 4 weeks out. I've had fighters come to camp and they've literally only had 2 to 3 weeks out. So in those cases, we need to go into protocols of what we consider is called mixed training. Mixed training protocols is pretty much as it's sort of literally sounding. We need to mix the phases together in an intelligent manner. I need to make sure the body of the athlete is prepared to be able to endure the stress of like plyometric training, power development training, speed training. Because to me, just based upon literature, it just isn't really, it's not advisable to really push these athletes right away into speed and power development when their muscle tissue and tendon hasn't been really developed or tempered to handle that type of stress. This is where injuries occur, shoulder injuries, dislocations, lower back pains. This is where it all occurs right there. So with that being said, we need to make sure, or excuse me, strength and conditioning coaches need to make sure that they can intelligently kind of fit in marginal aspects of let's do some strength training to make sure the tissue and tendon is ready for the power training. And that will last for like 2 sessions. After that 2 sessions, we'll slowly introduce some power training, but keep up concurrently with the strength training. So it's all just very methodical programming, especially when we have like 2 to 5 weeks out from a calendar date.
So I know, in working with Alan, you're going through the process of, you're still very young, and 17, you mentioned there are certain states where you're not even allowed to compete, but you have been, professionally, I should say, you have been competing since, or boxing, I should say, since the age of 7. Is that accurate?
Yes.
And there's kind of this recurring theme that we've heard with a number of guests on this show in the past, which is that the main or primary driver to your getting into boxing, as I understand it, was actually dealing with bullies. Is that fair to say?
Yes.
Can you tell me a little bit about that, or expand upon that, and how did that transfer into a boxing life?
So we lived by the park. We lived literally right next to a park, and we would always go, and there was some kid. He was a weird kid. He would bark at the cats, and he'd meow at the dogs. And he would chase the cats like out of the park and chase them with sticks and stuff. Now I guess he got bored of picking on animals, so he started picking on the kids there. And when he tried picking on me, and I pushed it real quick. I think I was like the age of 6, and I didn't take any of it. I just started throwing hands, and then he tried picking on my siblings, and they called me, and I was always like my sibling keeper. Like anytime they needed my help, I was over there, and I would run over there, and I would tell him 3 times, hey, quit picking on them, quit picking on them, quit picking on them, and he wouldn't stop. So I had to take care of him myself, and I was fighting with him so much. When I went into kindergarten, some kid had pushed me out of line, and I told him, don't push me. And he just turned around, and then he cut in front of me. And so like my dad always told me, if someone pushes you, you do something back. And so I just turned and I socked this kid in the eye. They sent a letter home to my dad, and they're like, well, they pushed him out of line and decided to punch the kid. And my dad, he wrote on the back of the letter, he said, well, why is that kid pushing my son? And I took the note back to my teacher. She looked at it, she ripped it up, threw it in the trash, and she didn't speak to me for the rest of the week. Like she just kind of went about schoolwork. But yeah, eventually my dad noticed like into how many fights I was getting. Imagine a little boy just everywhere he goes fighting with everyone. And so he asked myself and my older brother, do you guys want to try boxing? We're like, oh yeah, because our grandma had gotten us some little cotton gloves, Spider-Man gloves, and we were always, we would always tell the bullies like, oh, y'all want to fight? We throw them the gloves and we'd box them. And so he took us to the boxing gym, And the very first bag I hit was the speed bag, and after that, I fell in love with the sport. Kept going back, and I didn't have many bullies after that because where I'm from, there was only one boxing club, and they're like, "Oh, he's a boxer, he's a boxer." Like nobody really wanted to mess with me. So after that, I didn't really have much bullies.
Prior to that, you don't have, for instance, like a family lineage of boxing. So that was kind of your first step into boxing. Is that fair to say?
Yeah. My dad was a bouncer, but he wasn't no fighter.
You could argue he was a fighter, just not a boxer, I guess.
Yeah.
But in contrast, G, you come from a very strong family lineage of fighters, which of course includes one of the pioneers of full contact kickboxing, which we discussed last time, Benny the Jet Urquidez. And, something that I don't know that I ever had the opportunity to thank you for. G surprised me actually with a phone call with Benny at one point in time. And I have a lot of opportunity to interview boxers, and I would say I'm at a point now where it's not all that intimidating. But for those of you who don't know, Benny Urquidez, aside from being a pioneer of full contact kickboxing, was actually a martial arts action star, and in my opinion, has two of the greatest fight scenes of all time, shared with Jackie Chan. If you guys haven't had, just look him up on YouTube and come back and let me know. And I'm like a big action, 80s action star geek. And she just kind of walked up to me with the phone, and when I answered it, it was Benny, and I acted like a fool. I didn't have anything to say to him at all. I basically just sat there. But I never got to thank you personally for that experience. So I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Your smile said it all.
Andy, you were a kickboxer. Is that true? And an amateur MMA fighter.
Yes, that is correct.
And in fact, your motivation for getting your degree in kinesiology was due to an injury. Is that accurate?
That is accurate. Yes.
Can you tell me a little bit about how that went down?
Yes. Growing up, I did kickboxing. I was a very active child. Competed a lot. Very athletic. I wasn't the most academically astute individual growing up. I was just really focused on athletics. I just liked the adrenaline rush of everything. And just like Alan, I just liked contact sports. It's like I never got into basketball or football. It's just something about testing skills with kicks and punches, the science of dodging. It's like that really excited me. Unfortunately, at the time when I was 17 years old, I did have a pretty much a kickboxing incident. During training, I completely tore my ACL, my left knee. With that rupture, I went into surgery and I had that reconstruction occur. But post-operation, the operating doctor straight out told me, hey, it's like, you're in a position now where you cannot be athletic anymore. He pretty much discouraged me to continue kickboxing, fighting, and even anything athletic. Obviously, my parents were in the same room, and when I was done post-operation, meeting with the doctor, my parents actually reiterated more in a caring manner. I understand where you're coming from. It's like, hey, I think you should give up just fighting, just study, just continue your academics. I was stubborn. I was hard-headed. I was 17 years old. I was like closing into like the peak of my athletic ability. Is like telling me to slow down. It's like that was extremely depressing for me, especially for any 17-year-old that has athletic ventures, and you're being told to slow down or give up on it completely. So I was stubborn. I didn't want to do that. The therapy that was done on me, it just wasn't giving me the proper results I was looking for. So as I entered college, I started studying kinesiology because of the fact that I just needed to find avenues to learn and understand about my injury and how I can improve it and go back into combat sports. And a few of my friends actually told me, like, hey, why don't you just take up some kinesiology classes? Like, what is kinesiology? I had no idea what that was in college. And it was pretty much exercise science, pretty much what I was doing in a more scientific approach. And that's how it got opened up to me. I began studying. I studied rehabilitation. I pretty much rehabilitated my own knee by myself. And I rehabilitated it to a point where I went right back into combat sports. I continued amateur MMA and kickboxing all through college, and pretty much retired from it at 25 because I really wanted to focus on educating fighters on the exercise science aspect of things, because I see the lack of communication and the lack of application in a scientific approach to these fighters. And I just don't want a situation where a young individual has a future and in an athletic career, have a devastating injury, or just simply being told they cannot do it just because of some sort of physical obstacle, when I myself done it through physical training. So there is avenues in which we can fix a few things here and there for these young athletes and even current athletes that are within midway in their career.
You ever get in with your clients and show them what's up? Have you sparred Alan before?
Only not as much. If you're talking about if I'm ever going to spar Alan now, he'll just swim. He'll just beat me up.
What if you could use your legs? You could use the kicks.
Oh, no. I wouldn't want to do that either. Nope.
Oh, man. So I think given the circumstances, I'm sure you guys had a plan in terms of turning professional before all of this transpired and you had to make the changes in your training and in your camp. What is the plan for turning professional now? So how do you want to execute against that? And I don't know, G or Alan, which one of you would like to field that question, but is there a specific, do you have a plan given the circumstances of how you want to go pro or when?
So yeah, the plan was for him to stay amateur, of course, try to make the team for the next Olympics. He completely rebelled and said no. So that's out the door.
That's out the door.
Yeah, kind of teased me every other week. He was sending me messages on, this person's coming, messaging me, and then I think him and my daughter made a plan to convince me. So Roxy convinced me. So I said, okay, I brought him down. So I told him the plan is this. The plan is you need to stay focused. You're no longer 17. You're a boxer. It's going to be a pro. And this is a man's world. And you have to be a man and you have to, change different things. And are you ready? And he said, I'm ready. So I said, okay, well, I think we'll debut you in July. So this was in December. When was it?
This was in
January.
yeah.
In January. I was doing a camp out for the Garcias, and I had plans to go to Mexico already with my daughter. And we had plans to come to the Pacheco fight in Dallas for the Jesse Vargas and Mikey Garcia. And that's why I intercepted Alan. We went to the fight. We all flew back to Los Angeles. Roxy the very next day flew back to Mexico. She's been there since February. And it gave me the time with him alone to teach him certain stuff. Funny story, we were at the UFC gym and I'm trying to teach him how to shorten up his punches, because that's one of the main things you need to do is sit on your punches, shorten them up, pick your shots, don't get careless on your offense, don't just throw, know what you're doing and you balance everything together. And as I was showing him, mitting him, Andy and Mark were watching, and he hit me with the left hook of the jaw. So that pretty much convinced them that I'm probably one of the toughest women out there. Yep. So yeah, it was a little how would I say, challenging to change everything. I see this kid has amazing talent. I brought that back to Andy. I have this kid, I want to bring him, and he has amazing talent. I know he's teachable. Just the conversation he had with me in December at the trial, he was speaking to me like a grown man, and he was just speaking life into what he wanted to do. And he was so clear about what he wanted to do. I saw his picture, and he was always in the back of my mind. And yeah, so that's pretty much getting into his mental state in his head about how boxing is here in Los Angeles, how we have to do things differently, how we have to be patient. Patience is very hard. The transitioning into boxing with him, it's easy because he's very talented. it's the changing of the mindset. It gets sometimes a little complicated, but at the end of the day, at the end of the night, he understands. He's very easy to sit down and talk to, and we've been able to pull out sparring with champions and superstars, and now we have world champions reaching out to us and, hey, can we get some sparring? Of course, we don't want to be sparring for everyone, but I tell him and I repeat to him all the time, as soon as you start getting comfortable in that ring is when you know you're ready. And he's allowed himself to be comfortable. I mean, we have great sparrings, and sometimes he's a little hard on himself. You know, he's young. I see he did great, and he shuts down a little after, a little upset, and when he sees his video of him sparring, he's like, hey, shit, I did really well, you know, and so he gets confident. Every sparring session, he's more and more and more confident. Every day we go to the gym, every day we learn something new. Even if it's the same thing over and over and over again, I always tell him it's something new. So it's just repeating everything, you know, building that solid foundation, which is the balance, the footwork, the hand and feet coordination, the eyes, the listening, the focus. So all that, with that being said, you know, I'm very calm in the ring. I don't yell at him. I don't, you know, start yelling instructions to get him, you know, jumpy. He's very comfortable. So I'm happy with that.
Before I go to the next question, I'm going to share a comment with you. Serena said, hey, Alan Garcia, and she gave you, Garcia, and she gave you the heart, and then tagged a number of other people, most of which are girls. But I know that from watching Against the Ropes podcast a few weeks ago that you guys have to deal with G first. She's watching the DMs. She's checking the DMs. So
That's my cousin.
Oh, that's your cousin.
Yeah.
My bad. And really quickly, I want to give a shout out to Fidel, who jumped on. Fidel, of course, from Talking Again podcast. Thank you, brother, for joining. Marco Trejo, owner of Sweet Science Boxing Gym in Hawthorne, California. And Lukey from ITR Boxing. Shout out, Lukey. Thank you guys very much for joining. I mentioned that I know you guys were recently on Against the Ropes podcast, and I watched that episode. And that was one of the things that came up was the idea of women, and that involved or got to a quote that I have here where you essentially said, and I'm paraphrasing, don't ask me about having a woman trainer. Ask me about what she can teach me. And it sounds like, you know, based on what G's experience is here, that you guys have been working together. How long have you been together, actually?
Since February 28th.
Okay. So since February, you guys have been working together for a few months. What is it that you felt like in that short period of time that you've been working, where are you seeing the greatest improvements in working with G? Because I see this strong relationship you guys have. So obviously when it comes to ask me about what they're teaching me, it sounds like you're learning a lot from this group. What kind of credit do you give to them, or where do you see those gains?
I'm seeing that, you know, I'm eating healthy. You know, everybody knows G can cook, but you know, I'm eating healthy. I'm working out, longer training sessions. And like I said, I never had a strength conditioning coach, so I take that in as much as possible. I always give them 100%. Even on days that I feel drained, you know, I give them my best. But I feel like not necessarily like it's revolving around me, but like they really pay attention to me, like all day, every day. Like I go have they make sure I've eaten, they make sure I'm eating, they you know, check my weight, how I'm feeling, like it's just stuff like that throughout the day, you know. So it's just like it's just getting the attention because, you know, I'm a 17-year-old amateur transitioning into the, well, I wouldn't say transitioning, but I like going into the pro game at an early age. I feel like I've adapted real well. Some people, they think I've already have some pro fights. Like they think I'm like, you know, like 8-0 or something. And like, how many fights do you got? I'm like, amateur, like no pro. I'm like, none. And they're like, wow. So like, you know, obviously we're doing something right. I can see the change, they can see the change, and we're happy with how far we've come in the matter of time that we have. So I like seeing results pretty much. And so I'm happy that I get to see the result.
And you mentioned training with G, and G, you talked about getting good sparring and also wanting a lot of sparring from world champions and people at the elite level. I know that so far you have sparred Ryan Garcia. You've also sparred Chon Zepeda. One of the things that you had mentioned on the Against the Ropes podcast was kind of the difference in sparring with elite level fighters or fighters who are on another level, a level above kind of the crop. So I guess my question is, what are the biggest differences that you notice? The one thing that stands out to everyone when they watch Ryan, they always say like his speed. His speed is what's different. Is that really the only thing that's different, or are there other nuances that you pick up on in getting an opportunity to spar challengers like Chon Zepeda and Ryan Garcia?
No, you you definitely feel the power. Ryan, they think he's just fast. No, he's fast and he has power. He's a really good boxer. He's if you're around him, you see he's about boxing 24/7. He wakes up in the morning and you hear him shadow boxing from his room and yelling, and he's about his craft 24/7. And Chon, like you can see that like his footwork, he has such amazing footwork. He's really calm in the ring. He knows what he wants to throw. Like he can read his opponents real well. He's like he got that mentality. He got the mentality of a world champion and not just some prospect. Same thing with Ryan. He got the mentality of a champion, not just some prospect. Like she said, they're already comfortable in the ring with whoever they go in there with. So they're able to help me, and I'm learning. I get to learn with them. I get to see different stuff. I get to see shots that not other fighters throw, not many other fighters throw, and so like it's different. And we love the work. We love going out there and working with world champions.
And I know, Andy, you were on that podcast as well, and we've talked a lot about strength and conditioning. One of the things Alan has said is, we didn't have strength and conditioning where I came from. We have it here. One of the things that you said on Against the Ropes was you still consider strength and conditioning a luxury. And part of that was a question that I had asked on the chat, which is, why is it so difficult for boxing to adopt strength and conditioning when other major sports in the world really rely upon it? When you look at like the NFL, the NBA, and things like that. And one of the things that you mentioned was that you were a luxury. Do you think we're going to get to a point here soon where we realize at the highest level, when you're competing for a championship or multiple championships, that it's really more than a luxury? I think when you look at when you look at something like the NBA, if we talked about an NBA team that didn't have strength and conditioning, we would think of that as underprepared, or that their athletes were essentially not getting the best of care. Do you see that?
Figure that out really quick.
Do you see that in the future for boxing? Are we at a point where soon we're going to say, hey, if you're an athlete operating at the championship level and you don't have strength and conditioning, then you're not really operating at the championship level?
Absolutely, yes. I think currently, with the obvious unfortunate events that have been occurring with this pandemic, as the world slowly begins to not only adapt to a new normal, but try to transition forward into the regular normal again, we're going to see within boxing and combat sports in general, where strength and conditioning will be something of an essential, because now we're seeing these fighters, or we're seeing the promoters calling on the fighters, now that we're seeing networks and platforms clamoring for fights and events to be broadcasted very soon. So in all essence, the fighters that have their fitness up, of course, skill will always be the priority, but also the fighters that have their fitness, their physical ability high, they're going to be dominating most of these events. So through this transitional period, as we move forward from this unfortunate pandemic, I think we will be seeing also a slight change in boxing and combat sports, where they're starting to realize, wow, the strength and conditioning portion really did make a big difference in these short notice fights, and these short notice events that are being scheduled back to back to back for these fighters. So yes, I believe soon we will be seeing a transition towards where strength and conditioning is a luxury for boxing, but it's going to move towards an essential for boxing at the highest levels.
And one of the things that we talked about earlier is also perhaps there being less opportunities, at least in the near term, as we have to go through situations where we're fighting without fans or without an audience. The limitations of not having a live gate could impact small and local promoters. If there's less opportunity, that also could mean that we're seeing more competition at a higher level. G, do you think that in the near term, from a professional boxing standpoint, that we're going to get better fights as a result of there being fewer opportunities out there?
Yeah, absolutely. I believe so. I'm pretty sure that things are going to go back to, I don't know if you say normal, but they're going to go back to fans eventually, maybe at the end of the year, maybe next year. But for the meanwhile, I'll tell you what, these fighters better look spectacular. They better look really good. If there are no fans in that audience, and it's just you in the corner, and the corner's telling you to do something and you don't do it, or you look like mediocre, then yeah, I mean, it can affect, your next fight and what you get. But if you look spectacular, you look great, I mean, you'll do, you'll have fans watching you, no matter if you have a filled up stadium or just you on TV by yourself. You could hear the person in the corner sneeze or something. Yeah, you have to look great. So I'm pretty sure a lot of people are going to reach out to these strength and conditioning coaches or trainers. Before that, get a hold of Andy. He's the best in the business. But with that being said, with all the social media platforms, people are putting their stuff out there, and the different strength and conditioning trainers out there. People are reaching out to us. We had some, fighters reach out to us all the way from the East Coast. They wanted to join camp, but due to all this, COVID-19 or this happening, they're not able to come. But next camp, they want to be here. So we have people reaching out to us, our team, for Andy, and they see the work. He's actually one of our models here, and they always watch his work, and they're always commenting and asking me questions about the training camps. And they saw that we pushed through, that we're ready. If any promoter calls us tomorrow, we're ready to fight. We're ready to fight. So the kid looks great. His body looks great. His conditioning, strong, powerful, a lot of conditioning. He did 6 rounds yesterday with his mouth closed. And he held the full conversation with me without breathing hard. So it does make a huge difference. And y'all need to stop playing with your careers and call Andy.
Alon, one of the things she mentioned there is, fighting without fans, or it being quiet in the arena. So I have a question. How vocal is she? Are we going to hear her on TV yelling out in the ring, or is she pretty quiet as far as trainers go?
No, she's pretty quiet as far as trainers go. You won't. I mean, you'll probably hear her. Yeah, like you're gonna hear her in the little background. It's like if she's standing like 60 feet away from the ring. She's really quiet. She doesn't even yell out what she wants. She just says, like, throw straight right. She doesn't yell or nothing. She's real calm, and and I like that because it's just the way we communicate. She's real calm about things. She just tells me. She'll ask me questions. We'll communicate in the corner, and then I'll go out there the very next round and adjust.
Let me give a couple shout outs here. On the shout out to Paco Perez, of course. Paco, thank you for joining us from BoxFam. Shout out to Paul Benke as well from BoxFam. And I don't want to butcher your name. I apologize, but I think it's Myra Soto Martinez. She said, "My boy," talking to you. So shout out to you guys. Paco actually has a question for the group here, which is, we talked a little bit about how this is going to impact professionals, and our emphasis has been on pro boxing because of the fact that we're talking about your transition going pro, but you're an amateur, and Roxy obviously is also an amateur, G. So how is the pandemic impacting amateur boxing? Obviously, we've seen things like the Olympics, which are being postponed, but also the fact that you have to travel with support groups, work within USA Boxing. Are we going to see, how is Roxy being able to continue through this, or is there an impact that on the amateur side that we haven't really talked about here?
Well, it has made a big impact on a lot of amateurs. I'm not speaking for everyone. I'm speaking for my daughter and myself. We've been in this for so long. I was born, raised in the gym, and my daughter is a fourth generation fighter in our family. So boxing is just always a part of our life. We hold that with us everywhere we go. No matter where we go, what part of the country or what part of the world we're at, we're always boxing, boxing, boxing. I was scheduled to go to Germany to do one of the camps for Team USA with the young girls, and that was canceled. So I know a lot of kids that made the team this year, the juniors, the youth. It's disappointing for them because I mean, it's heartbreaking because this was the year of world championships, and that's a big, how would you say, something big on your resume. My daughter won world championships in 2018, so she has that on her resume. It's a huge accomplishment. Continentals, gold medal. She has, the international gold medals. So these kids that were fixing to go out there and fight in Russia or wherever the world championships were going to be held in 2020, that's gone for them. So a lot of kids, some of the kids, parents, a lot of the kids, they're not as fortunate as we are that we are part of boxing all year long, and some of them give up, some of them didn't work out, so they don't know when the next tournament is, so they're out doing other sports or they're out doing something else. They're not focused mainly on boxing. And there are the other kids that got their hearts broken and they're just training in the garages, and it makes me happy to see that because they're serious about their sport and they're going to go a long way. So yeah, a lot of kids will continue the boxing and wait for the next tournament, and a lot of kids have maybe fallen off and they're doing other things. So yeah, the USA boxing for all the amateurs, it's sad because a lot of the opportunities that we had are out the door, and we don't know when the next step is. We are hearing in December we're going back to Louisiana. So they're compacting all the tournaments that were supposed to lead up to that major tournament to make the Team USA to travel, around the globe to represent their country. That's going to be in December. So it's going to be a huge tournament. So I'm urging everybody to stay ready for that one. Get ready for December. Be ready for December.
Speaking of December in Louisiana, there's also, I extended a thank you to you earlier. I owe Roxy a thank you as well because this past November, Just Boxing Foundation was giving grants to people from Los Angeles who had made it to the trials in Lake Charles, Louisiana. And to be honest, I actually had a hard time getting that off the ground because I think people weren't sure if it was real or not. But Roxy took the time to kind of record a video message that I think went a long way for lending credibility to the grant, and as a result of that, I credit that for us being able to go out and give support to other fighters as well. So please tell Roxy thank you for taking the time to record that. She was the first one, I think, to accept it and record, and I appreciate it. So
thank you.
Please extend that to her. But I also know that you guys have some commitments later this afternoon, and I want to give you an opportunity to plug anything that it is that you want to plug in terms of where we should follow you on social media and anything like that. So why don't we go down the line? Alan, where can we follow you? What shout-outs do we need to give?
You can follow me on Facebook at Alan Garcia, on Instagram at he's xxalan with 2 N's. And yeah, pretty much you'll find, I don't even remember my Twitter, but yeah, you'll see my Twitter somewhere on there.
You'll find it.
Yeah.
Mama G, what do you think?
Mama.go2.
You have to ask him? That makes me laugh. For those of you who aren't here at the top of it, he had to show me how to share this post on Facebook over the over the thing. The social media experts.
Mama G02.
Mama G02. Andy, what about you?
Gloria Alvarado on Facebook.
Oh, okay. Andy, what about you?
I just want to first take the time to thank our main sponsor, Daniel Whitney. He is one of the founders of Jive, which is a CBD company. He has supported me, also all my fighters throughout not only this pandemic, but our own journey. So just want to say thank you to Daniel Whitney, and please check out Jive. This is a CBD company. It is for energy and also for relaxation. So great company application. And if anyone wants to follow me or ask me questions through DMs, they can follow me at the.elite.
Oh, you cut out a little bit at the end of that, but I'll make sure to share it in the comments when you guys watch this on YouTube and get that for you. But thank you guys very much for participating with me here today. Thanks for bearing with me as I learn to do all this stuff through Zoom and for helping me share this on social media. I really appreciate your time and your attention. All the best to you in your pro transition. I hope that we get to see that soon. And I think that's all we got for Just Boxing Live this afternoon. Thank you guys for joining us. As always, I'm your host, Sean Fitzgerald, and I'll be back with you soon. Appreciate it.